I used to work in the asylum sector, actually. I don't think I mentioned this in the piece.
No, you didn't.
No,
Yeah.
I did for 7 years in Vienna at the basically central authority responsible for handing out benefits to newcomers. So the Austrian government has
Mm.
set up this program called Grundversorgung, so basic, whatever, like basic support
Basic
in terms
needs. Yeah.
basic need support or whatever you want to call it, where pretty much anyone who applies for asylum gets a certain amount of money per month, certain amount of money per kid, and so on. And they would come to this place where I worked, and I was sort of doing administration for it, and bookkeeping and stuff like that. And there, obviously, you experience firsthand what's going on, and you see that there's that it's really weird because you're sort of like handing out money to someone who for a fact has just come back from Syria to fight for ISIS,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because what is this Muslim dude from Chechnya or Georgia, whatever, doing coming back from Syria, right? So you kind of know what's going
Ah,
on,
yeah.
and so there's
Right.
this, uh, and of course, you couldn't, we put up posters, basically, without words, just images, sort of explaining like just the most basic rules of behavior, towards women, especially,
Mm.
right? And you would just always think, why would you even have to say that? Why would you even have to like tell someone that you can't just grope, a woman and things like that? It's really it was really shocking, and of course, um, the the patriarchy in that culture was rife, and you could just you knew if you couldn't, they wouldn't let like the wives talk at all, but of course the Austrian government sees them as equals,
Mm.
and a lot of men just wouldn't have it and just didn't understand why we would even want to talk to his wife, right? And then you kind of knew that once you handed her the money, especially when it was cash, because a lot of newcomers didn't have bank accounts yet, especially when it was cash, it would end up in his pocket once they went out the door. So quite frustrating and disillusioning for someone who's always been more on the left when it comes to immigration.
Mm. Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's just reality, and there's we witnessed a lot of violence. One of our clients was killed. It was just there the day before. A woman killed her husband, and the things like that were just going on. You could see, okay, this is what are we doing, And then you saw a really big difference once the war in Ukraine started, because we had a lot of Ukrainian refugees coming in. And that again was eye-opening to just really highlight the difference in culture that you would
Mm.
observe, because people coming in showing great gratitude just to be safe, right? Ukraine is just a couple hundred kilometers from Vienna, so it's not far. So it's not like they have
Mm.
to go through a lot of different countries to get there. Um, there were even people who, when it was safe to go back to their town, would come to our office and offer to pay the money back that they had received. A
Mm.
lot of people offered
Yeah.
to volunteered to translate if they spoke German or English, right? So it's a whole different, a completely different atmosphere and mindset that was going on. So yeah, it's just those are just some firsthand experiences that really play into um, all that, and kind of, I guess, explain where I'm coming from also
Mm.
to
Mm.
that issue. So last week in Western Germany, there was this huge international like Muslim ecumenical kind of like meeting of moderate Muslims, 50,000 strong. That happened last year, an official sort of event. And there, you know, so that group is, quite, emphatic about their being moderate. But, again, you will find that men and women will be separated like at the event, and things like that are still going on. So it's really widespread and quite quite troubling to a lot of people.
How many of those of the people who have been radicalized do you think are second generation, and how many are recent immigrants? So is the same kind of issue happening that is happening often in the UK, which is that the second generation are often more radicalized than their parents. In some cases, even the parents came to the UK to escape Islamist regimes, but their children have radicalized. Do you have any sense of whether this is a phenomenon of recent immigrants or if this is a generational issue?
So the difference between immigration to Germany and the UK is that immigration from Muslim communities other than Turkey is quite a new phenomenon, right? Whereas, of course, in the UK, you have, because of empire and all that, you've always had like a certain influx of people from Muslim parts of Asia, right?
Right.
To sum it up. So that's big. That's a difference. So there's a lot of recent immigrants, many of whom haven't had a chance to have kids that would be old enough to be radicalized in that way. So when you look back on, let's say, the recent event, the recent stabbing, the attacker was a recent immigrant. So he came to Germany 2 years ago. He was denied asylum. And the scandal, of course, now is, why was he still here? To carry out, well, without any perspective, without any, it just was here, right? And was radicalized, or radicalized himself, however you want to frame it. So you see a lot of the radical people that then commit crimes will be recent immigrants. Generally, sort of like the crime statistics show that recent immigrants are vastly disproportionately likely to commit crimes, violent crimes, especially knife crimes, things like that. So that's going on. Of course, the same problem that you described for the UK also exists here, where even a second generation feels kind of at odds with the mainstream society, not having really been taught its values, which isn't really their fault. It's just because they grew up in their community where those values are not necessarily shared, and there's a tendency among progressives, very often sort of cultural relativists, to say, well, we have our values, they have theirs. We're going to come together at some point, and but that's not what has happened, and what we're seeing